In this edition of Wellbeing at Work, how would you deal with the class from hell? We'll be telling the story of one teacher who was confronted by unrelenting disruption and destruction. As we follow his struggle, our panellists give their advice on what you could do and where you could turn if you faced a similar situation. The experts are Hannah Essex from Teacher Support Network, Victoria Galbraith, a counselling psychologist, and Richard Gerver, a head teacher turned education and creativity consultant. If you're watching the programme on the Teachers TV website, don't forget you have direct access to extended discussions and extra video tips from the panel. Although the dramatisations in the programme are based on a true story, we're not, of course, using the actual people or school involved.
I was really looking forward to starting at my new school. For my first lesson, I'd assigned getting to know each other and having a bit of fun to set up the year. They were instantly unbearable. They wouldn't sit down but kept walking around the room. They wouldn't stop talking, even shouting. They had no respect for me.
These pupils have obviously spotted the vulnerability of this new teacher, and I suppose that's probably not that uncommon that new teachers probably get the brunt of the disruptive behaviour in a school.
But also, this teacher's gone into that classroom and it's clear that they're so desperate to build a rapport with these kids for all the right reasons. Unfortunately, it's one of the most common mistakes new teachers make when they're first entering the profession or when they're first starting in a new school. They want to be liked, they want to show that they respect the children, and they want to build that immediate rapport. And of course, what often happens is the children respond to that in a way that they think, OK, here we've got a teacher who just wants to be our mate, doesn't have the level of discipline, therefore there isn't that level of respect, and the children often use that. I remember when I first trained as a teacher, one of the first pieces of advice I was given, I know it's an incredibly common piece of advice, is don't smile till Christmas.
That teacher may well be feeling quite anxious, and if that is the case, then the pupils are likely to pick up on that. They will sense his fear, unfortunately for him. But the reason being is that so much of our communication is done non-verbally. Between 65 and 93% of social meaning is communicated non-verbally. So the pupils will pick up on that, very much so.
I'd like to know what kind of preparation that teacher was given by their colleagues. This is probably a problem class, a class that's played up with other teachers. But how much briefing did that teacher get before they walked into the lion's den?
Even if this teacher isn't new to the profession, isn't a newly qualified teacher, but is new to the school, we need to ensure that our schools have induction programmes in place for all teachers starting a new journey in a new school for exactly the reasons that you're highlighting.
I thought, well, if you want it like that, then fine.
Sit down and be quiet, all of you, now!
But they didn't react well to me being strict. To be honest, I doubt some of them had ever been confronted by someone in authority.
Sit down, all of you!
They're not used to anyone, even their parents, saying you can't do that, which basically leaves teachers helpless to control them.
What he did very quickly was take it, if you like, to the highest level, which is shouting at those children, which I suppose, first of all, in terms of body language, shows an element of desperation. But at the same time, once a teacher's let go of volley at a shouted level, where else can they go in terms of the control and discipline structure for that class of young people?
Tone of voice is really important as much as the non-verbal communication. Actually speaking quietly can have a more powerful impact than shouting. And if you respond in a calm, cool tone, then that can actually bring down the behaviour of the pupils as well, rather than if you shout, then the response may well be as aggressive as the shouting has been.
After a lesson such as this, it may be that the teacher feels quite anxious and quite fraught really about what's just taken place, feeling I'm not in control here, feeling possibly quite disempowered by the experience. I couldn't control my classroom, and that's a job that I should be able to do as a teacher. So again, it's important, very important, that the teacher is able to get some support from other people if he's feeling in this way.
Perhaps they can talk to a senior colleague, a more experienced colleague, and find out what their practices are, how do they keep control of their class, and also make sure that they're aware of all the policies and procedures within the school so that they know what sanctions are available to them and how they can implement them, knowing that they've got the backing of the head teacher and other senior colleagues.
I think that's really strong advice. Teachers mustn't feel that by admitting they're struggling or finding something difficult to cope with, that they're showing weakness or a lack of professionalism or a lack of skill that is ultimately going to constitute that they're incompetent. Far from it. You know, one of the first and most fundamental things we're taught at college is to be reflective practitioners. And so we have to be reflective, we have to be honest, we have to seek the advice of our colleagues.
I realised behaviour was bad across the whole school, but I seem to have the worst of a bad bunch. I know they played up in other lessons, but oh yes, they made a special effort in mine. They would even break equipment deliberately, knowing I wouldn't be able to do anything about it.
Move out the way for the glass, please.
There's a lot of publicity about kids in organised gangs trying to stab each other in the corridors. For most of us, the reality is kids misbehaving in much more subtle ways.
Sir, can I go to the toilet?
Sir, can I please go to the toilet?
Sir?
They would ask to go to the toilet at the same time.
Can I go to the toilet?
What a stupid thing to have to manage when you're trying to teach. And the noise, constantly shouting and screaming and tapping their pens.
What we saw from the clip there was what might be termed herd mentality or pack behaviour. And what this does to the teacher is to feel, I'm really losing control of this. So the pupils will pick up on this, and for the teacher it becomes almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They start to believe, you know, I'm not coping, I'm not managing, the pupils play up, therefore I'm not coping, I'm not managing.
And we're now in a position, aren't we, where we've got a serious health and safety risk, actually. We're in a science lab with chemicals, with glass, with some seriously dangerous objects. That objectivity has to click in this teacher's mind that they have to protect those children. And what they have to do, therefore, is stop this lesson as quickly as possible. Now, one of the strategies that might need to occur here is the teacher calls aside a child in the class who they can trust maybe more than the others and send them out immediately to find another responsible adult so that they can come in and help calm the situation as fast as possible.
It doesn't look like something that they can handle on their own, and that's okay. It's okay for them to say, actually, I need a bit of support with this. And if someone else comes in, a colleague comes in and backs them up on the discipline side, then that will reinforce the message to those pupils that they're serious about it, and that kind of behaviour just won't be tolerated. And it's not a sign of weakness to get someone else in. It can actually really help the situation.
I think also we've got a situation here in terms of holding the school to account. It would be highly unlikely that other colleagues weren't aware through the noise or disruption that was going on in this teacher's class that there were significant problems. And therefore, to have allowed this class and this teacher to be in a position of such potential risk is irresponsible. And so there has to come a point, actually, at which the school's leadership and management, both for the well-being of the children, but actually for the health and well-being of that teacher too, decide that this scenario can't be allowed to go ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, there is a real legal responsibility as well as a moral responsibility towards the employees within the school, and stress is one of the major factors for why teachers are absent from work, and a strong cause of early retirement from teaching. So it's really important that the school takes that responsibility seriously and recognises this as a risk and really does something about it and supports that teacher through it.
I tried other tactics. I sat down with them individually, tried to get to know them as individuals, talking about their problems and aspirations. You know, I mean, what do you want to do when you leave?
Dunno.
No idea?
No. Can I go now?
But to be honest, the only problem was that they were gobby little scumbags. I don't know why, really, but the school didn't seem to give a monkeys about the problem. I was told it was me who needed to sort it out. If other teachers could do it, then so should I. But I know for certain I didn't even have the worst class. Basically, I used to dread going to work. Sometimes I had to force myself to get out of my car and go in. Then I realised I had to get away and find another school.
I've got a real mixture of emotions watching that final clip, actually. In the first instance, I think the fact that he did something really proactive, that looked really constructive, the idea that he was going to take individuals out of that class and talk to them alone, I think was really positive. But then, of course, we get to the point where, having tried that, he tried to get into work, he was desperate to get there, and then just couldn't face it.
And that's unfortunately not uncommon. What may have happened for him is that he just didn't realise the impact it was having on him emotionally. He didn't realise how the stress was really affecting him until he got to that point where he physically couldn't bring himself to go into the school. And we hear about that quite often on the support line.
In this situation, unfortunately, what the teacher is faced with is often what's called the stress response, which is either you fight or you flee. Or you freeze. And in this situation, he's decided in many ways to escape because the stress has become too overbearing for him. And unfortunately, it does make it more difficult for him to then engage with the profession again and to re-enter the classroom. But avoidance in the long term doesn't help. It only maintains the problem and can exacerbate it.
Something like this can be the start of a period of long-term sickness absence, but there's evidence to show that the longer somebody is off work through stress, the less likely they are to get back into the workplace. So it's really important that interventions kick in now, that he is referred to occupational health, that he seeks support of his trade union, that he finds somebody to talk to about this and gets full support of the school and is kept in touch with during whatever period of absence he may have.
And also for the teacher in question to possibly try and think of what's happening to him and to try and sort of restructure his thoughts may be very, very useful. So rather than thinking that he's a failure, thinking that he hasn't managed to deal with this, that he can try and rethink that and make his thoughts more positive.
I suppose there is always that instinct, again, isn't there, with teachers, that we focus on the things we can't achieve, the things that are going wrong so often. And actually, it would be really useful for him to use this time to maybe list, actually, the things that have gone well, the classes he is working well with, the relationships he has built constructively and positively. And that would help him reshift that kind of emotional balance in his mind, to start to see actually that he does have a future, that he has got potential, and potentially he's got the makings of a good teacher.
And it is indicative that it was a school-wide problem rather than something isolated and focused on that one class and that one teacher, which is why it's so important that schools engage with developing and implementing a school-wide behaviour policy, which they have to by law.
Well, we must end the programme there. But don't forget, you can see extended versions of our conversations and extra advice from each of us on the Teachers TV website at teachers.tv/wellbeing.